Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to Grace Point here and online. If you will stand with us, let's join and sing together. A God who was, we worship a God who is, we worship a God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors, He parted the raging sea. My God holds a victory. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Oh, we shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely true. We won't be quiet. Oh, shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause He hung upon that cross, then He rose up from the grave. My God's still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Oh, let's sing this out. We were the beggars. We were the beggars, and now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're on and free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. The house of the Lord sing praise. All right, come on. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. The house of the Lord sing praise. Come on, church, sing. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. Come on. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. Oh, glory now. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. Oh, give Him praise this morning, yeah.
Good morning, Grace Point. Have a seat. Welcome to Grace Point. My name is Nikki. I'm the Young Adults and Communications Director here, and it's my privilege and my joy to worship with you this morning. And I've just got a few things to let you know. If you are new or newish, first we want to welcome you. We want to say thank you for spending some time with us. There's a couple things you should know about who we are as Grace Point, and the first is our mission. Our mission as a church is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ by creating and environments where life change can happen. And you guys are joining us in our corporate worship environment. If you brought kids with you, they may be downstairs in our kids' environments. We have environments about service and missions and small groups and a lot of good things. And if you want to learn a little bit more about those environments, that bulletin you received when you walked in is a great resource. They're listed in there. But that's also a tool for you. It's the best way that we can connect with you to start. Inside, there's this little tear-off piece of paper. You rip it out, you fill it out, and then you take it back to the Connection Center, which is towards the back of the lobby, my left, your right, at the end of the service, and there will be someone there who can exchange that piece of paper for a gift. They'll also give you a handshake, a high five, fist bump, whatever you're most comfortable with, and just welcome you in person because we want to connect with you. We want to say hello the best way that we can. If you're a regular around here, you know that card is also for you. We read those prayer requests and pray over them every week. If you have important information you need us to know or you want to sign up for an event, that's one of the ways that you can do that. Hey, if you are new or newish and you want to know a little bit more than what that bulletin can tell you about Grace Point, we want to invite you to an environment called First Step. That happens the first Sunday of every month. So the next one will be April 3rd. That's in 2 weeks. And that happens during this service time. So you'd want to come to first service and then go grab a coffee and come back for second service or this time period. So you can ask questions, meet some of our staff, meet some of our volunteers, and get to know Grace Point just a little bit more. If you're interested in taking part in that class, you can use that connection card to sign up. Or if you think you're going to stick around Grace Point for a while, you'll want to download the Church Center app. That's a tool that we use around here for signups to get more information out to everyone. And there's information about how to do that in one of the seat back pockets in front of you or in a seat near you. So make sure you grab that. We're going to be here for about 65 minutes. We're wrapping up our series, Let's Talk, with a really, really important conversation. But before we get to that, will you stand with me as we continue in worship?
Of the darkness, your light guides me through. Our eyes are on you. You are near to the broken. The weak find their strength in you. Our eyes are on you. In the madness, you're the peace that calms my soul. Our eyes are on you. You bring hope to the hopeless. You're the love that won't let go. Our eyes are on you. We lift our eyes to you. Where our help comes from, our hope is found in you. Lord of all, we lift our eyes to you, exalted one. In the midst of the darkness, you're the light that guides me through. Our eyes are on you. Here to the broken, the weak find their strength in you. Our eyes are on you. We lift our eyes to you. Where our help comes from, our hope is found in you. Jesus, Lord of all, we lift our eyes to you. of all, we lift our eyes to you, exalted one. We lift our eyes to you, where our help comes from. Our hope is found in you, Jesus, Lord of all. We lift our eyes to you, exalted one, exalted one.
Amen. In the book of Jonah, we see a fight, or not really a fight, a struggle with a man and with God, back and forth and back and forth. And we see Jonah, who has the good news, and he understands what God is calling him to do, and he runs from that. And several years ago, I spent about 5 years with this idea of embracing Nineveh. What does it mean to embrace something that maybe you're not comfortable with, maybe whatever situation it is that you're dealing with here and now, but to embrace the season that you're in. And I found it weird that in Jonah 3, verse 10, it says, when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring upon the destruction that he had planned for them. And so God saved the people. And Jonah was upset because he didn't feel like they deserved it. Yet he's been given all these gifts, and he'd been given all this wisdom and the ability to hear from God. Yet he didn't want other people to receive the blessings. And I think it's easy as Americans, especially in the situation we're in right now, and the uneasiness of war and all the political mumbo-jumbo wrapped up in it. We forget that the gospel doesn't say, if an American should call me by my name, they will be forgiven of their sins. It says if anyone. And the good news is good news for people in Ukraine. It's good news for the people in Russia, in Africa, and all over the world. And we have been so blessed in America. Sometimes I think God shows up time and time again so much that we forget what it's like to be at the end of your rope and to need and to be in the dark and say, God, I don't know what's happening right now, but you are the only way that we're going to get through this. And so this morning, let's not be like Jonah sitting on a hill, just thinking about other people, maybe at your school or other people at your job, or even the people across the seas that are dealing with hell right now. But let's look at it as if God is calling us to be the gospel to people in our schools, to be the gospel to people in our world, to love others unconditionally. So as we receive gifts, give those gifts freely. Let's sing about that this morning. Time and time again, God has shown miracles, and it is our responsibility to give that grace, to give that truth back. Let's sing this song together. Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change, waiting for change to come, knowing the value never failed me, God, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise now, your promise still stands, and great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, and this is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. I know the night won't, and your word will come now. Your word will come to, and my heart will sing. My heart will sing your praise. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. And our hearts will sing now. My heart will sing your praise again. Oh, your promise still stands, God. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. We're still in your hands. fill me, God. Sing, you give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is every heart now, God, in grace. And great are you, Lord. Let's sing this out. It's your breath now. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. You give life. You are love. You bring light in every dark space, God. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Sing, great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath now. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you. It's your breath. Come on. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath. It's yours, God. In our lungs. It's yours. So we pour out our praise to you only. All right, church, let's sing this out together. It's our testimony. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord.
All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing.
Sing it, church.
Great are you,
God, we understand now. You breathe life into us. It's easy to forget that that's one of the first miracles that you've given us is breath, and that with every inhale, as we exhale, we should exhale love. And Father, forgive me, forgive us if we have failed to remember that. Everybody is experiencing things in different times, in different places, and God, I just pray that we would speak grace and truth and love to people that may need to hear it, and people that may not get it at home. For that is what you did here on earth. You spoke truth and love. And God, as we learn about that today, would you open our hearts and ears? I know that's what we say every Sunday, God, but just like Pharaoh's heart was hardened, let none of our hearts be hardened this morning. Would you put a special place this morning on our hearts that we could take one thing away and apply it to our lives? God, we give you the rest of this time and ultimately our lives. We ask all of these things and we say, yes, God. Yes, yes, and amen. Amen. You may be seated.
Have you come to the end of your rope? Do you feel like you're done?
Does worry cloud your day or anxiety cling to every thought?
Does fear hold you back from experiencing all that God has for you?
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
75% of the American workforce has experienced burnout.
1 in 5 American adults is affected by mental illness.
Anxiety disorders are the #1 mental health issue in our country, compromising almost 18% of our population.
15 million adults have social anxiety.
Adults experiencing depression have a 64% greater risk of developing heart disease.
And Christ followers are not exempt.
23% of pastors have personally acknowledged they struggle with mental illness.
The prophet Elijah struggled with burnout.
Even Jesus talked about anxiety.
Joshua and the Israelites battled fear.
The early church struggled in the absence of Jesus.
If God talked about mental health, we should talk about mental health.
So let's talk.
Let's talk.
Let's talk.
So today, we're wrapping this series up with one last conversation. We've said all throughout this series that this has been 3 churches going after one topic. And there's actually the other churches, Western Hills and Countryside, are actually having conversations like this today as well. So I actually want to invite Bob Clifton and Becca Goodwin to come up and join us on the stage. They're the experts. They're the ones who are gonna fix everything that I've broken over the last 4 weeks. But I'm gonna introduce them here in a second, or they're gonna introduce themselves here in a second. But Bob and Becca actually helped us with the creation of this series. Whenever we, Pastor Grant and Nate we sat down and put together the teaching series. I sent it to them because I didn't want to mess it up. I wanted some input, so they actually helped us with this series, and they're back to kind of close the circle here and finish up this series with us. So, Bob, Becca, thank you for being here. Would you introduce yourselves to Grace Point real quick, and then we'll jump in?
My name is Becca Goodwin, and I'm married. I have a 10-year-old son, Benjamin, and a 6-year-old going on 15. Savannah, and I've been in counseling for 6 years and started private practice 2 years ago during COVID. Best time to start a business. So yeah.
Good. And Becca and her family attend Grace Point here. Some of you know Becca as well, but Bob?
Yeah, my name's Bob Clifton, born and raised here in Topeka, married to my wife, Kathy, 22 years. I've got a 20-year-old daughter at K-State, and I've got a 17-year-old son at Seaman High School. And I have Restored Counseling Services. I am co-founder, and we are just about 2 years old right now.
So you both started your kind of own thing right in COVID.
Yes.
And
It was all the Lord.
It was
I would not have done that on my own.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let's just jump right in with this, okay? Here's the first question. If I trust God, why am I struggling to manage my anxiety, and why do I need medication as well?
Well, take those as two separate questions. Something I would say in regards to our anxiety right now that I've been paying close attention. I noticed that when COVID really got traction, that the more that I was paying attention to news, social media, I was actually beginning to feel more ramped up. So I began to realize as I was moving along, there is a quantity that I need to be learning and understanding from the news, and then there is time that I need to be spending connecting to the Father. And I say that we always want to be connecting to the Father, but I think as things dialed up a notch and obviously just kept getting worse, that it grew more important to have more intimacy with the Father to combat everything that was going on in regards to the anxiousness I think a lot of us were feeling in this unknown. Why don't you answer the medication question?
No pressure. I think there's a stigma out there regarding medication, and I'm not against it. Because sometimes I feel like we just need a little bit of help to get to a place where we can do the hard work. I'm going to kind of be a little bit of a nerd here. Anxiety is a nervous system response. Our nervous system is wired into our brain. God wired us for survival, and so ultimately what's happening is there's something in your environment that's causing your nervous system to respond and react. So medication actually kind of helps calm and allows you to think a little bit more clearly than you would without it. So again, I know there's a stigma out there regarding medication, but again, sometimes we just need it to get to the place where we can do the hard work.
So it's not necessarily the cure-all. Right. It's a Band-Aid or a bridge to help get us to a place where we can start thinking clearly, or we can do some of the hard work. Do you have anything else to add about that piece? Okay.
I think Becca got it done.
She nailed it. She absolutely nailed it. Do weight and depression go hand in hand? Becca.
Yes, weight and depression can go hand in hand. Weight loss and also weight gain can be a result of it. And you got a little nerdy during the 9 o'clock service. I'll let you talk about cortisol.
Yeah, I'll say this. It's not directly related to the weight gain, but I came home like during COVID, and I told my wife, I said, I think I see more people smoking in their car right now. And she's like, I don't think you're right. I said, no, I think that people are smoking more. Pastor Tim mentioned when he was talking about, I think it was burnout, that we have to watch how much we're self-medicating. And so I finally found it this month that for the last 20 years, smoking has been on the decline until last year. And smoking for the first time started going back up. So our cortisol is released when we're stressed. And as we have been more stressed, then more cortisol gets released. This is really interesting too. 2 ways that cortisol gets out of your body: sweating and crying. So men, we've got to put on Titanic and get these tears rolling to get the cortisol out of your body. But you also have to understand that cortisol, it actually blocks weight loss. Remember, cortisol is here to help you in stressful situations. Well, what our body does is it conserves things when we're stressed out. So if you are high stress and trying to lose weight, it's probably difficult to do those things together.
Okay. This is the one that kind of over the river and through the woods, but it's still a good question. How should Jesus followers respond to a fellow Christian with either undiagnosed or untreated mental illness, but still exhibits the behaviors and symptoms of that mental illness? How should we respond to followers of Jesus who either untreated or undiagnosed?
I can't remember what my answer was during the 9 o'clock service.
You said they should consider loving people.
Yes, thank you. There's so many questions within that question. You know, it's a very deep question, and it can be really hard to be around people who are difficult or they experience a lot of emotions. I say they need to be loved, but I don't want that to be the end all, if that makes sense. You guys, they most likely need an ear to hear. They need a safe space to be able to share what they're experiencing and what they're going through. And so I say love them as in, you know, create time for them to be able to open up, but it has to be a safe space for them to be able to share. You had a really good response to it earlier. I didn't want to steal your thunder, so.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit earlier today, and one of the things that I mentioned is that Jesus was brilliantly truth and grace. And for all of us in this room, our personality tends to lean towards one more than the other. I had a wonderful woman come up to me at the break after the service, and she says, you know, my former pastor told me that I can bring the truth too often, that sometimes I'm going to need to wrap that in grace when I bring the truth. So probably some of you can relate. We're going to bring grace and we're going to bring truth, but my encouragement was to just stop and ask God what's needed here. So often we want to jump in with our advice and what we know. And what a lot of people will feel on the other end of that is you didn't actually listen to me before you started talking. So I love this idea of let's have an ear and that let's really listen to not only them, but listen to the Father as to what is a helpful response right here.
So let me push a little bit further into that. One of the things that people need, I'm not going to say more or besides counseling, but maybe more than counseling, is a good friend. We talked about that a little bit. The way that we say it is circles are better than rows. Like one of the reasons we want you in community is so you have those types of relationships where you can share some of that stuff and where you can have somebody who you trust and they trust you speak grace and truth into you. So is that, you said there's more to that question, or there's so many other areas, so many layers to that question. Can you go one more layer deep? Yes. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, that's okay. I wish I was well rested, or my brain would be working a lot.
Becca's coming back from Florida. Poor Becca.
With kids, so you can stop. You can stop laughing. So, I shared with them that on the ride back home, the plane was sitting on the tarmac for 2 hours because of weather. And Dave, my husband, got to sit next to Ben, my 10-year-old, who can regulate. I got to sit next to Savannah, my 6-year-old going on 15, and that was not fun. He owes me big time. He has. Let me kind of wrap my thoughts here. And I'm not sure what angle the person is coming from. And so I don't know if this is the Lord. I don't know if boundaries might be a question that somebody is asking about. Like, how do you set healthy boundaries around people who, you know, might be hurtful to be around? And so if that's an issue, is setting healthy boundaries, may have to like limit your time around them, or like small groups are huge. We need a place to process things. And so you may just need to, if this is the person themselves asking or asking on behalf of someone else, invite them to your small group if they don't have a small group. Because I said this in the first service, that Our experiences are coded in our brain, all experiences from birth. And so every experience that you and I have had, our brain has coded. And memories, just like food, has to be metabolized. It has to be processed. And small groups are a great place to be able to talk out life. We're not meant to do life alone. We were created for relationship. And so it may be that there's just some processing that needs to take place.
Good, thank you. How do I overcome imposter syndrome at work and while living a Christian life? Unpack imposter syndrome a little bit, and then...
Yeah, so imposter syndrome at its simplest form would be we can feel like a fake, or we feel like we're faking it, meaning what I'll say is our true self isn't in the room, but what I'll call, once again, psychobabble, I'll call our false self. And that's the self that we think that people are going to enjoy the most. And most of us, unbeknownst to us, have worked way harder putting that together than understanding who we truly are. I say this, that you and I were formed out of the creativity and laughter of the Trinity. But we're watching the guy, gal on social media, and we're assuming it's so much better over there. But if all time stood still while the Father designed you, and he said, I have a life and a purpose for you, then we want to spend a lot less time looking over here, and we want to dig in a lot deeper about what's going on right here. So we want to be careful of how much attention are we paying to other people, and how much attention are we paying to what's going on in here.
Good. Anything to add to that, Becca?
Yeah, I would just add that be mindful of your thoughts, kind of what Bob was mentioning here. Because when you get to the place where you can catch, I call them automatic thoughts, when you catch those negative thoughts and you're able to kind of dissect them and peel them apart and replace them with truthful statements, it's very empowering. And again, that takes place in small groups. Just putting a plug out there, small groups, everybody. But yeah, definitely, if you're in a place where you can identify, I'm experiencing some negative thoughts, it's impacting me, it's affecting my performance, you need to create space to be able to dissect those thoughts and really replace them with truth.
Good. How do you handle separation anxiety as a Christian?
Don't separate. Is that a great answer?
That's a terrible
answer. Okay. Separate on occasion is what Pastor Tim is saying. That foundational, it's so interesting that, I think it's so fun that each conversation takes on a different form. And so I love that we're continuing to come back to this idea of community. I teach a men's conference once a year, and one of the things I remind men of is 90% of American men don't have one best friend. Oh, Bob, that's outside the church. Actually, it's inside the church. That 9 out of 10 of us as men nobody else really knows what's going on in our world. And so we feel very isolated and alone in that process. So the separation anxiety, I think part of what we're experiencing, and we're experiencing it more culturally now than we ever have before, because what people know about you is an online version. And not enough people know what's actually going on. So I would bring it back to part of the separation anxiety is just feeling separated from the culture as a whole, maybe from our church body, even maybe from your small group, if you know you're showing up and not bringing your real self to that process.
Okay, Becca, what do you think?
Yeah, I might tackle this from a trauma perspective. I work with children in the foster care system, so there's a lot of trauma that is in their background. And if we've had experiences that have been intense enough and long enough that are defined as trauma, and we didn't have somebody to walk us through those, and I'm thinking specifically children, that can impact separation anxiety. And so it just kind of makes me think maybe there's somebody that has had some experiences in their past that have impacted them, and when they're alone or they're separating from that person that keeps them regulated, that can be very dysregulating for them. It can be very paralyzing. And so it may just be a matter of processing and talking out some of those experiences that have impacted you.
Okay.
Can I add one quick thing? I would just say, too, one of the main fears in us letting people get to know us is most of us in this room at some level fear abandonment and or rejection. So if we fear abandonment and or rejection, then what we typically do is we keep ourselves to ourselves, because it's okay if you reject me but don't know me, but God forbid you get to know me and you still reject me.
Wow. I want to turn the corner here and talk about family, marriage, parenting, all that stuff. But before we do that, one of the things that we have consistently heard, is maybe not just over the last 2 years, but especially over the last 2 years. Okay, somebody comes to sit down and talk with me. They want to work through things. It is beyond my level of competence, and I'm going to do more harm than good. Hey, you should call so-and-so. You should. Here's some people that we would refer you to. They call, well, they don't have an opening for the next 6 months. Okay, when did you ask for an appointment? Well, usually at night or on the weekends. Well, why didn't you ask for a time 2:00 in the afternoon? Because your employer will let you go if you have a doctor's appointment, if you have something else going on, they're going to let you. Why is it, or maybe you can speak to that a little bit. Why is it that we think that the mental health piece isn't as important as the physical health piece, to put it at the same level and put priority to it? Yeah. That's not a question that was asked. That was completely off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Bob's turning towards me. I guess that means it's my turn. Ironically, mental health affects physical health. And that, again, goes back to your best friend, your nervous system. I tell people the more flexibility you have, the sooner you're going to get in. And I understand, again, there's this stigma around counseling. There's just all these, again, automatic negative thoughts that come to mind, like, oh, I need a therapist. It is so liberating, you guys, to be able to just talk about life, to talk about the things that have happened to us. And so I go back to the more flexible you are, the quicker that you can get in. But yeah, there is a high demand for evenings, weekends, Sundays. I was asked once, do you have anything after 9 p.m.? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in bed by 8. I go to bed when my kids go to bed. So the more flexible you are, the sooner you can get in.
Okay, good. My spouse deals with anxiety. What are some practical ways I can help them?
You can't tell them to stop it. Yeah, okay. This is such a sticky question because you live with them and you have to deal with them every day, and this can be hard. I say this, that we want to be true to ourselves. So once again, we're trusting the Holy Spirit to bring us what the answer is right then. Sometimes our spouse needs grace and kindness and generosity and mercy, and I do think sometimes they just need an honest dose of truth. And we need to be aware of what's going on at any given moment. Now, I'll say this for some of you, that you've been in a long and sustained battle and maybe difficult marriage. I think a trusted girlfriend, guy friend, that's a girl if you're a girl and a guy if you're a guy.
Right.
Let me not promote anything today from Pastor Stage.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
He has to spend a lot of time
That's good.
reversing. I think it's just good for us to have somebody to walk with that can remind us to stay the course. And because it can get very lonely and isolating, especially when we want to honor that person, but we don't have anyone to walk with in that.
Okay. Becca, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on what Bob said. I would say if you're the spouse that's not experiencing anxiety. It may just be that your spouse needs a place to process that, what has happened again in their past that's causing them the anxiety. But also, if you have anxiety, how it makes your spouse feel, like the truth piece of that. If you guys don't go and process that, you're going to be stuck in a cycle. And it's really hard to get out of that cycle. It's kind of a pursue, withdraw, like I need you to be with me, kind of going back to the separation anxiety question. I need you here because you're the base that keeps me regulated. But then for the person, that can feel really suffocating. And so we just have to be mindful of if you're experiencing anxiety, that is okay. Anxiety is a real thing. And it's just a matter of having a space, again, to process and explore what's causing me to feel this way, what's keeping me stuck.
So what's a good first response for a spouse who either hears or sees that their spouse is feeling anxious or they see the signs? What's a good first response for them?
I would just say, hey, I notice when I leave to go run errands, you get really anxious. Can you share a little bit about that? And just open the door for them to
Ask
talk
a
about
question.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And don't say get over it. You said that. Don't not get over it.
Don't just let it go as an option, but like number 10 option.
Okay, it's further down the list. Got it. Okay, come back to you, Becca. How do we help kids who deal with big emotions?
Okay. Great question.
You don't sit on a plane for 2 hours on the tarmac.
No, you don't do that. Don't do that, especially when you're already exhausted. Let me get a little bit nerdy here. So our brains are not fully developed until we're 25 years old. And children experience big emotions because the right side of our brain is the part that develops first. And that's part of feelings, thoughts, experiences, feelings, emotions, and experiences. So children are right-brained heavy. And they experience emotions even more intense than adults, obviously, because our brains are mature. The left side of the brain that allows for logic, reasoning, discernment, decision-making doesn't develop until later on. So it makes sense that children experience big emotions. And I know oftentimes I've heard parents say, use your brain. They are. They're using the part of the brain that's actually online, if I can use that verbiage. And so what we have to do is we have to become their emotion coaches. If you're a parent or caregiver, I'm going to give you 2 books that are a must read. The first one is called The Whole Brainchild by Dan Siegel, The Whole Brainchild. And then the second one is more for adolescents, because when you become a teenager, your brain completely shuts down and rewires itself, which explains kind of the teenage behavior we experience. But a book for adolescents, The Power and Purpose of the Teenage Brain. And those are both by the same author, Dan Siegel. But yeah, we have to become emotion coaches for our children, and really that means walking through the emotion with them. But before you can do this, your emotional tank has to be full. And I'm gonna drop a nerdy word. Self-care is really important. And what self-care is you finding an activity that when you engage in this activity, it fills your tank. It makes you feel like you're at your best. Mine, I love biking without my kids. So when I go biking, I feel at my best. I know parents who have taken the day off. It's a school day. They send their kids to school. They intentionally take that day off. They go get a coffee. They walk around Target, whatever fills their tank. Because just like when you fly, as flight attendants tell you as a caregiver, you have to put your mask on first. Because if you're passed out, you can't help the child next to you. So we have to put our masks on first. We have to take care of ourselves first and make sure our tank is full before we can help our children. But to become an emotion coach is really just validate their emotions. I shared this in the first service that during COVID, the most vulnerable population from a mental health perspective, the most vulnerable population were children. Because they don't have experiences to pull from like you and I do. So to go on spring break and then never go back to school was terrifying for them. They were grieving the loss of so many different things. And for us, it's very easy to say, it's okay, it's gonna be all right, just hop on your iPad. They don't have the ability to regulate what they're feeling. So we have to walk them through that. It's okay to validate their emotions. It's okay to say to them, you feel really scared right now. Or I can tell you're really upset that you don't get to go back and see your best friend, Ben. So be their emotion coach. Help them validate those emotions, and it will help them to grow into an emotionally healthy adult.
Good. This is the last question, then ask for just final thoughts from you guys. As we raise our kids, are there things we can do to help them be mentally healthy or prevent the onset of mental health or mental illness?
A couple things I would offer. One is your home a source of joy? Neurologically, when you walk in the house, parent, and you're in a bad mood, it takes a little less than 5 minutes to download that bad mood into the rest of your family. So for me, I'm doing a check on my way home from work. What am I bringing into the house? Am I bringing the least or am I bringing the best into my home? And if you're bringing the least, drive around the block a couple times till your best shows up and then bring that into the house. So one of the things I always wanted is I wanted a joy-filled home. We just went to Branson for 4 days. Blessing, cursing. You guys know this. You've been to Branson. We went to Hertz Donuts, 35-minute wait, couldn't do it. We went to Krispy Kreme, it was okay. What I just love, 17, 20 years old, I loved the laughter in the car. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to be around my parents at 17 and 20 years old. But there was just incredible amounts of laughter all the way home. So I think we want a joy-filled home. And I think that's going to combat a lot of things.
What do you think, Becca?
I'll piggyback on that. Our nervous system, our brain is constantly scanning the environment. And so just like Bob said, how you present yourself when you come into the house is how your children or your spouse is going to perceive you. We pay attention to body language and facial features. So if somebody walks in the house and I can tell they look like they haven't had a bad day, automatically you kind of feel anxious because you're not sure, how do I approach them? Can I say hi? What am I going to do? We have to keep that in mind as parents. How you present yourself really does have an impact on the way that your child responds.
Okay, good. Ask you guys for final thought, but I want to ask you guys, what's your takeaway? What's the thing you're going to take away from today? A lot of information, a lot of questions, I get that. But what's one thing that you can take away? Either a book, a thought, maybe you shouldn't drive around the block a couple times because gas is so expensive. You just sit. So, is that fair?
Fair.
That's fair. That one's free. But whatever, what's your takeaway from today, and how can you apply that with kids, with grandkids, with your spouse, with somebody that you know? Final thoughts.
Yeah, I would just say right now, psychologically, if you said, what's one thing we need right now as a church? I think it is this act, and COVID really forced it, and it exposed a lot of things. But we've got to practice slowing down and spending more time with the Father. We are in such a hurry. People right now coming in that are anxious, they say, I'll give the same piece of advice to every anxious person who comes in my office, which you will not guess this in 100 guesses, is drive the speed limit. And everybody gets a pucker factor right there because none of us do. But you want to start to work on anxiety, drive the speed limit for a couple weeks.
I kind of want to slap you.
But pastors don't speed for
really
sure.
Good. That is really good.
Oh, that's great. I said this at the first service, and I'm going to say it again because I feel like there's probably some of you that need to hear this. Anxiety, depression, fear, sadness, those are all real. The Lord designed us and created us the way that He did for a reason, a purpose. And so all of those things are real. And all of the experiences that you and I have had in our past, they can play out in our present. So we just have to be mindful of that. But I just want to validate that, COVID, that was scary. And I think that there's just a lot of people that need to hear, yeah, I was anxious too. I was afraid too. Like, it can be so liberating to just have somebody validate your thoughts and your feelings. And so I just want you guys to know that God is not ashamed of you. He's not ashamed if you have anxiety. He's not ashamed if you have depression. He knows you better than anybody else walking this earth. And he understands what you're walking through. Sometimes he just takes a little bit longer to help you, but he knows. He's there, and he's not going to leave you. And that's why I go back to small groups. I'm plugging that in again, because it's a safe space to be able to just process life with people who love you and are going to honor that vulnerability.
Good. Thank you, both of you, for being here. Would you guys thank Becca and Bob? Nikki and Faith got a couple things that they want to share with y'all real quick, and they were not prepared for this, obviously. So I'll give them the floor, and then we'll be done.
He prayed in first service. That was my clue. Okay, now I'm totally off. Thank you. One of the ways that we worship here at Grace Point is through the giving of our tithes and offerings. If you are a guest with us, this is not a part of the service that we expect you to take part in. This is for those of us that call Grace Point our church. But if that is you and you'd like to participate, there are 3 ways you can give. In the gray boxes in the back, if you're watching online, you can mail a check to the church office. And then digitally, you can give on our website, gracepointtopeka.org, or through that Church Center app, which we talked a little bit earlier. Okay, now it's time for the GP3. 3 things you need to know. Take it, Faith.
And the first one is ShareFest. And ShareFest is happening April 30th. This is a way for us to get outside of these 4 walls and serve other people. So if you would like to take part of that, that's April 30th from 8 to noon. And we are going to be at Logan Elementary School. And you can sign up on the Church Center app. And also there's more information about that in your bulletin.
Okay, I am so excited about this next one. Ladies, there is a special event coming to Topeka September 23rd and 24th. It's called Fresh Ground Faith. It is Fresh Ground Faith. It is for all ladies, young ladies, ladies with a little bit more experience. Anybody is welcome to this event. Except tickets are going to be incredibly limited. It's going to be held at Fellowship Bible Church, so there's a very limited number of seats. But because we are a co-sponsoring church, we can get discounted tickets for you. We think this is going to be an empowering event for women. We want you to go, so we're talking about it early. We're going to talk about it often, and tickets will be available in the lobby beginning next week. So invite your friends and your coworkers and your mothers and your daughters, and we will have a great time at this event.
Last one, but certainly not least, the bake auction is back, people, and we're excited. We are so excited. That is going to be March 27th at 5 o'clock. And this event, if you've never been, it is a blast. And it is for a great cause. We get to send our students, our tandem students, to camp. And so there are 3 B's that you need to know. Number 1, you bake something delicious. We're excited about it. And then you bring it back by 1 o'clock on next Sunday, and you bring it to the tandem room. And then the third one is you come back at 5 and you buy stuff. It's going to be great. And so I have some teens that are going to come up here real quick, and we have some awesome pies to give away. But before we do that, if you have a kid and you would like them to have childcare, please sign up on the Church Center app very soon so that we can provide enough food, because also we're going to serve y'all food too. So if you would do that, that would be great. Under your seats, you may have a pie dish, and if you do, you get to take a pie home today. So who has a pie dish? It might be around you.
Look at the seats next to you.
Oh, we got a pie dish right there.
Oh, Shannon got one.
There should be one on this side. Shannon got one. All right.
All right, right there. Woohoo!
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys, and we look forward to seeing you guys at the bake auction.
All right, everybody, have a good week.